All right, guys, so welcome to our section C of the RBT task list. So we're going to go over skill acquisition. We're going to go from C1 through C5, and then we're going to review questions afterwards. Okay. If you guys have background noise, can you mute yourself? Thank you. Okay, so C1, identifying the essential components of a written skill acquisition plan. So a skill acquisition plan contains the target, a goal, measurement system, data, and an evaluation of the collected data. It'll give you your operational definition. It'll tell you what measurements you need to use, what's your data collection method. That's all going to be written in your skill acquisition plan. So there's going to be questions on the exam that ask you, what are the components in a skill acquisition plan? And they're going to put client social security, or the client's diagnosis, or all of those things. Those will be somewhere, but not in their skill acquisition plan.
Disclaimer, we don't know what's on the exams. We're just saying there could be questions like that.
Oh yeah, so there could be. I'm just making stuff up, but there could be. Okay, so that's C1. How do I switch? Okay, C2. Prepare for the session as required by the skill acquisition plan. So as an RBT, you are to know how to prepare your session. So just making sure you have all of the materials that you need. Do you have where you're going to collect your data? Do I have all of the stimuli I need, all my reinforcers? And so just making sure that you thoroughly read your skill acquisition plan before you go into your session. So that's C2. Okay, and then we have C3, use contingencies of reinforcement. So contingencies are your if-thens. So this depends on this. We're all about contingencies in ABA. So it's all about the consequences. This depends on this, based on consequences, reinforcement, punishment. And then they want you guys to know the difference between conditioned reinforcers and unconditioned reinforcers. So conditioned reinforcers are going to be those that are learned, or I guess I should do unconditioned first. So unconditioned are like your primary reinforcers. So like food, water, shelter, sex, sleep, all of those things that are innately desirable. Those are going to be your unconditioned reinforcers. And then your conditioned reinforcers are going to be things that are learned, and it's also called secondary reinforcers. So those, they have been paired with some type of primary reinforcer, and therefore they have gained that reinforcing value. So they have been conditioned, and you have learned that now these are reinforcers, versus before you might not have known that they were reinforcing until they were paired with a unconditioned reinforcer.
Selena, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Because okay, so I understand that the conditioned reinforcer has to be paired, so it's not a reinforcer until it's paired.
Yeah, so it has to be paired with some type of primary reinforcer. So it was a learned reinforcer. So examples can be like a token board. The child might not have ever thought that this token board was reinforcing, but then he realized, like, the contingency, he learned that if I get these 5 tokens, this lady's going to give me an M&M. So now those reinforcers have become conditioned, versus like food and all of the things that you naturally need. Those are unconditioned. You didn't have to learn to like those things. They're just something that you need as a human.
Right, unconditioned.
Yeah, so whenever you see unconditioned, think about unlearned.
Natural, right?
Yeah,
It's a natural one.
things that you need. Think of like a cave woman. And then for
Mhm.
conditioned, those are going to be like worldly things of this world.
Right.
Yeah,
I
think like
understand.
Eric, like a
Okay.
rich guy, like Eric,
Like a rich guy,
like Eric.
lots of
Like,
money.
Yeah, you see me, you see chicken.
And
I'm
then
not
they
mad
want,
at you.
Eric is silly. And then they want you to know the difference between a continuous schedule of reinforcement and intermittent schedules of reinforcement. So continuous schedules are going to be the ones where you're reinforcing for every correct response. So like an FR1, that one's going to be a continuous schedule because I'm going to be reinforcing every single occurrence of the behavior. Versus intermittent, that's where we're going to go into like our varied schedules. Okay. And then C4, implement discrete trial teaching procedures. So DTT, as we know, is going to be a big part of ABA, but it isn't just ABA. So a lot of people think like DTT is ABA. That's not the only thing that we do in ABA, but it is play a big part. So DTT is highly structured, adult-led, and it contains that SRS model. The SRS model is stimulus, response, stimulus. And you can also think about ABC, antecedent, behavior, consequence. Okay, so DTT, highly structured, adult-led, fast-paced preferably.
And I want to quickly say this, like when we think of DTT, most of us in ABA world, we think of we sitting on the table with the child, like, okay, the child has to be on the table to run a DTT. Sometimes running a DTT in a natural setting is also very beautiful. I run DTT on trampolines. I run DTT on the rug. I run DTT on the sofa. Like, it's always beautiful when you run this program in a natural environment. It makes the child understand and makes the child actually feel like they are playing while they're actually walking.
Yep, that's a good point. You can also like, sometimes the table might start to become aversive. So you might want to switch it up that day. One day, that day, I'm just going to play at the table. We're going to bring all the reinforcers to the table and then we're going to DTT on the floor. That way we're kind of like switching it up and we don't make it so aversive. Okay, so the next one is C5, implement naturalistic teaching procedures. So naturalistic teaching procedures is also known as incidental teaching. Incidental teaching is basically they're learning on, and they have no idea, like on accident. They have no idea that they're learning. So it's child-led, loosely structured, and paced by the child. Do you have anything to add about NET, Eric?
No, you did awesome.
Okay, I think that's it. That's all I had for the C's. So we can go and take the quiz for C. Where did I put it? Oh no, I don't know how to get there. Oh my God.
Since
Click
this
on
one
the
was so,
ABA exam prep. Okay.
Oh, is this it?
Yeah, that's RBT A.
It's part C, so skill acquisition.
Yeah.
Did you,
since this one, I'm sorry, I was gonna ask you, since this one was so short, are we gonna go over another one or no?
Do you want me to keep going? I can keep teaching. I was just gonna go into questions.
Yeah, we can do questions. I'm saying after these questions, we can go to like D.
To D? Oh, well, C has a lot more.
Okay.
C is one of the longest ones.
Oh, okay, never mind. Keep going.
Okay. So here are some questions on the C portion of the task list, or do you want to just do all of the questions? When is your test, Avia? Okay, we'll just go. Cars, money, movies, stories, etc. Things whose reinforcing value is established through learned relation are what types of reinforcement? Conditioned, operant, respondent, or unconditioned?
Conditioned.
Yeah. Conditioned, everybody? Yes?
C.
Okay. Which of the following are examples of methods an analyst can use as described by Stokes and Bayer, 1968, to actively plan for skill generalization when creating a neo-instructional plan for a student? Okay, so anytime you guys see generalization, you're gonna want to think about training loosely. Training loosely means that
NEC.
we're gonna change it up. So like different stimuli, different settings.
So you're saying it's B?
B. Did you say B or D?
B as in boy.
Oh yeah, B. Sequence
So
modifications, training loosely, and indiscriminable contingencies. So just every time you see generalization and training loosely, that's probably gonna be it.
Okay.
Okay, a therapist provides a star token on average every 5 times the learner responds correctly. For example, the learner earned a star token after 7 correct responses, 4 correct responses, 6 correct responses, and 3 correct responses, averaging out to an average of 5 responses per token. What type of schedule of reinforcement is this?
It's a VR. Because interval is time and average is ratio, or do I have them backwards?
Go that way. Yeah, you're right. Variable is the average part, and then responses. So anytime you see ratio, think of responses. Anytime you see interval, think of time.
Okay.
So yep, you were right. Okay. A therapist is working with a client on toothbrushing in a task analyzed format. The therapist is teaching the entire set of steps in the task analysis, which means they are employing what method of task analysis training? So we only have three different chains. So it's going to be total chain, forward chain, and backwards chain.
I wouldn't say forward, because backwards when you start from the last step. It could be total because she's teaching the whole thing.
Yeah, entire set of steps.
Entire, yeah.
So total, we're going with total, everyone?
Yeah, so what is what is forward again? Is it something?
Yeah, so forward chain is gonna be where we're teaching only the first step, and then we're gonna hand over hand all the rest of the steps or do them for them. So we're only targeting that one, and then as they master that one, then we'll teach step 1 and 2. And then
okay, so something like chaining.
Yeah, so like let's say it was a hand washing TA and we're doing a forward chain, he would only have to open the water.
So
and
just
then-
one at a time, basically.
Yeah, so until they master that one, and then we'll move like that from the top versus a backwards chain, it's gonna move the opposite way. So for that one, we're gonna do all of the steps hand over hand. And then the last step, let's say we're teaching her to put on her socks. We're gonna do all the steps for her. And then all she has to do is put the sock over her heel. So that's a backwards chain. And then slowly we start to open them up the other way. Which of the following is typically not included as an essential component in a skill acquisition plan? The name of the client's BCBA, any teaching materials needed, the consequences for correct or incorrect responding, the SD.
The SD.
So which one is not included in their plan? So you know where you go and read the description of your target?
Right, I said that. The SD.
The SD's gotta be there.
The SD is gonna be in the skill acquisition plan.
Yeah, they're gonna tell you exactly what you need to do. They're gonna give you the material.
Oh, it
the
surely
SD.
is. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I said that. The consequence were incorrect.
So
No, the name.
Think-
oh my gosh.
yeah,
It's the name of the
think about Central Reach, and whenever you open the program and on the side where they put the description, that's their skill acquisition plan where it tells you like, what's the SD? What's
the targets.
yeah, what's his prompting? What materials do you need? All of that, that's your skill acquisition. So you're not gonna have your client,
The BCBAs.
yeah, the name of their BCBA.
See, I completely just did not understand the question. But now, like, I see when you said think back to CI.
Yeah. A behavior tech is showing a car to a student. They were asked to use a stimulus transfer procedure to teach the client to man for the car. When the student is shown the car, the tech waits for 5 seconds before providing the echoic prompt car, pausing for 2 to 3 seconds to allow the student to repeat the echoic prompt. If the student says car, they are given the car. Otherwise, after 3 repetitions of the echoic prompt and brief delay, the client is just given the item. After several days of intense training, the client begins to produce the vocal man car more reliably. The behavior tech fades out the use of echoic prompts altogether as the client begins to produce the man independently and consistently. What type of stimulus transfer procedure is this?
I don't know.
Do you know what stimulus transfer is?
Yes. It's I understand, and I want to say it's because I didn't really. I want to say B, but I don't want to be wrong anymore.
No, you're good. You're right. So
Okay.
what they're doing is they're transferring the control from one SD to the other SD. So I'm giving him the answer car. I'm making him do it as an echoic, and then eventually I'm going to get him to use that same word as a man. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Which of the following is typically not included as an essential component in the skill acquisition plan? So here's that question again, not included. So long-term or short-term goals, response definition, the client's diagnosis, antecedent behavior consequence.
The client diagnosis.
Yep. Client diagnosis, that is not going to be there. Okay, here's another schedule of reinforcement. A therapist provides a star token every 5 times exactly. The learner responds correctly. After 5 tokens, the learner can exchange the tokens for a reinforcer from the reinforcer menu. What type of schedule of reinforcement is this?
It's a FR.
Yes, fixed ratio. Which of the following typically is included in an essential component in a skill acquisition plan? So which one is included? Client's anxiety, fears, and phobias, the reinforcement procedures, client's likes and dislikes, or the client's insurance information?
The reinforcement procedures.
Yeah, all those other ones are just crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, I just told you this one. Transfer of stimulus control occurs when a behavior evoked in the presence of an SD comes under the control of another.
SD.
Woo, you got it. Stimulus transfer is the process of transferring stimulus blank from one set of antecedent variables to another, typically using prompting and prompt fading. How are you
I'm
doing
sorry.
that?
I don't know. I have no idea. Am I still doing something wrong? Well, I would say consequence. Or is it control? I think it's consequence. Sorry, lady.
Yes, it's gonna be control. Stimulus transfer is the process of transferring stimulus control. So we're transferring the control from one SD to the other SD. So the example that I always give is like, let's say a client is having a hard time doing a listener response. So you tell him, do this. And then right after you tell him, clap hands. So what you did is you just transferred the control from one stimulus to another. A group of students is usually very motivated to answer their teacher's questions throughout the class. The teacher, trying to be fair, will call on each student as equally as possible. On average, this means that each of the 5 children who typically raises her hand gets called on once every 5 to 7 questions. On average, when the teacher asks a question to the class. What type of schedule of reinforcement does this example most closely resemble? Okay, so it's talking about an average.
So we know it's a ratio. It's a variable ratio.
Okay, let's.
Huh. Wait, I haven't read it.
I think you're right. On an average, so it's going to be variable, and it's not talking about time. So yeah, I think it's varied ratio.
Yeah.
Which of the following is included as an essential component in a skill acquisition plan? So what is included?
They are so deep in these skill acquisition.
I know. The client's insurance member ID? No.
No.
A technologically complete response definition?
Oh yeah, it's that one.
Yes. Jill was working with her client, Tammy. Tammy was working on tying her shoelaces, but was having difficulty. So Jill began to teach the steps to Tammy in a task analyzed format. Jill taught the entire set of steps in the task analysis, providing prompting and reinforcement for steps that Tammy typically had difficulty with. For steps that Tammy could already do, Jill simply provided verbal praise. What type of task analysis method is Jill using with her client, Tammy? So this one,
I'm gonna say whole. I haven't even heard of these other ones though.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. This one is giving you a bunch of stuff that aren't even relevant. This is the only one that's a change. Okay, a dog approaches a human with its leash in its mouth throughout the day. The human will only walk the dog if it's been a few hours since the last walk, but the amount of time varies depending on the weather. If the human feels like going for a walk, etc. The amount of time varies, but is generally around 2 hours on average, but sometimes as short as 30 minutes and sometimes as long as 5 hours. What schedule of reinforcement does this most closely resemble? So they said average. So that's going to be our variable.
Variable interval.
Yep, exactly, because they're talking about time. So an average of time.
I didn't realize other people's on here. My bad, Selena. I thought it was just me and you.
Oh yeah, there's some Katie people in here too.
Oh, hi guys.
Girl, don't worry. We need this refresher just as bad.
Rodrigo is teaching a client to wash her hands. If I say it correctly, people laugh. Rodrigo completes all the steps to washing hands for his client using hand-over-hand prompting. But on the final step, he uses prompting and reinforcement until the client is independently completing the final step. When that step is mastered, he begins teaching the second to last and continues to take data on the last step as maintenance. He continues in this manner, moving backwards in the chain until the client is independently completing the entire task. What type of teaching procedure is this? Is it a reverse chain, future chain, backwards chain, or past chain? So a bunch of those don't exist.
Right, it's backwards.
Yeah, backwards chain. They like to throw random stuff like that. Every 10 minutes, pressing a button delivers a participant in an experiment a $1 bill. Pressing the button faster than once every 10 minutes produces no effect. It only works after at least a 10-minute cooldown period. What type of schedule of reinforcement does this example most closely resemble?
Hold on, every single this question. I would say fixed interval.
Yes, right, because it's a time and it's every 10 minutes. So he's only going to get the dollar bill if he pushes the lever every 10 minutes. Okay, so what are we saying? Fixed interval?
That's what I was saying.
Which of the following are examples of methods an analyst can use as described by Stokes and Bayer in 1968 to actively plan for skill generalization when creating a new instructional plan for a student? Technological, conceptually systematic, generality, broad training, limited stimulus regulation, active student responding, requiring their RBT certification, program common stimuli, train sufficient exemplars, and train to generalize.
I have no idea. Because I don't know those people.
I think it might be A.
It would have to be A.
Yes. Because I was looking at the last one, but program common stimuli. You don't want to program common stimuli. You want to train loosely, use multiple stimuli, lots of different ones, 3D, 2D, different dogs, or whatever. So I think A. What do you guys think?
It has to be A. It's the only one that makes sense to me.
Yeah, because they're not going to require the RBT certification for you to generalize skills.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Oh my God.
What?
Oh, I I thought that was wrong. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Okay, let's see.
It's
That's
okay.
program common stimuli. Plan to use stimuli that are relevant to the learner and will likely be encountered in day-to-day natural environments. For example, if you were teaching a child to tact, teach them first things that they see on their daily routine, their lunchbox, doorknob, car, etc.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Maybe it's because I never used that term.
Training. What was it again?
That was the
stimuli.
program control, or program common stimuli.
Mhm. When planning a client's training to generalize a skill to other people, places, or settings, which of the following should an analyst focus on doing? Use an echoic to tact stimulus transfer procedure, train and hope with the family present, avoid position bias, mediate generalization, train loosely, program common stimuli. Okay, well, now we learned our lesson and we know that generalization, you have to program common stimuli, and we know you have to train loosely. So are we saying
D.
D? Yeah, because we're not gonna train and hope. A therapist is working with a client with limited vocal language. The child is stacking blocks on a table as he interacts with the blocks. The therapist periodically asks the client what color, shape, and comparative size the blocks are as the child plays. What type of teaching strategy is this? NET, DTT, Montessori programming, or man training? So in this situation, the therapist is asking the client lots of questions like what color, what shape, what size, as the child is playing.
It's NET.
Yes. Okay, 2 more. When planning a client's training to generalize a skill to other people, places, or settings, what should an analyst not do?
Train and hope.
Okay, I think that's a good one. Position bias refers to what? A lot of people kind of struggle with this one because we don't really talk about it too much like in the clinic. But position bias is where they're just continuously picking the one on the right just because it's on the right. So they don't even care what it is. They just keep picking that one. Okay, so let's read the answers. Consistently selecting stimuli by their location when their location is irrelevant. Selecting the item on the left when the teacher asks, hand me the one on the left. Responding incorrectly or liking to sit on the aisle when flying commercial. What do you think?
Probably A.
Yes, consistently selecting stimuli by their location when it's irrelevant. So they just keep picking the one on the right just because it's there. So that's why we always like move the cards around to make sure that they're not just picking that one that's just closest or whatever. Woo!
Good job.
Okay, that was good.